Hello and welcome back to the Bored Whovian YouTube channel, and today it is the final day of the 14 days of Doctor Who. I've done it, 14 uploads in 14 days, 13 reviews and a little tier list to begin with. We're finally here, my final review of all of the Doctor Who Christmas specials. Yeah, twice upon a time today. I've gone through every single one of them from 2005 to 2017. I kind of set myself this challenge just kind of off the cuff one day, on late November, it was like something like November 30th, and I was just bored and I just thought, let's just do something completely different, because I just thought, yeah, screw it, let's do something. I was trying to think of Christmas ideas for videos, and I thought, well, I could rank the Christmas specials, and I thought, hold on, I'll go one better. And I'll be honest, some of my motivation originally for this entire series came from Mr. TARDIS. As you know, around every Christmas he does a daily upload series. He had Daleksember, Cybersember, and this year he's done rankings of the top 50 scenes in New Who. You know, and he does this every year and really challenges himself. The difference between me and him is he actually plans his a lot more in advance and actually records them in advance. Mine, not so much. I'm actually recording this. On the night of the 22nd, technically, but right now it's gone past midnight. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. On the 23rd, so this should be technically coming out tomorrow. Originally, I was about 10 days in advance when I recorded the first video, but as time has caught up with me, I'm now doing it a day or two in advance. But we're here. We're at the end, and I'm glad I've done this. I'll admit. I'll be honest. The views aren't done as well as I hoped. But I don't really care. Like, I've started this journey. I'm not going to stop midway because I'm not happy with it. Because I'm just going to keep going. And that's the kind of person I am. I've started it, so might as well just get through it. And I'm really excited now I've done. Because once I've done this, I can kind of focus on Christmas a little bit more. Well, not that I haven't, but like once I've done this, you know, it's Christmas in 2 days. Once I've done this, and then I can enjoy that, enjoy all the festivities, actually knuckle down on some schoolwork, or uni work rather. And, you know, the next video after this will probably be the review for the New Year special, which I'm looking forward to. If you've seen my trailer reaction, you know, please check that out. I'll probably put the card up here for that video, but that review will be out, as usual, whenever live episodes come out, straight after the episode. But let's go on with this one. So, Twice Upon a Time. Obviously, it came out Christmas Day 2017. A while ago. I remember being really excited for this one, just because, you know, regenerations don't come up so often, and I love it when a regeneration comes along. And I've lived through a few now. I've lived through 1, 2, 3, 4 regenerations. I don't really remember Christopher Eccleston to David Tennant because I was very little. I didn't really watch Christopher Eccleston's Doctor Who. My family didn't, so I didn't because I was quite small. But, you know, I didn't have the intelligence to turn the TV on and make myself watch it. You know, my first proper one was Tennant, and that really hurt me. And this is the last regeneration story we've had. Obviously, it's appropriate watching this, considering we are only 3 stories away from another one. And you probably won't see, but there are some tear marks here. So I did cry a little bit, and it's because Peter Capaldi is one of my favourite Doctors. I will eventually do a Doctor ranking at some point. I think I'll do it on some sort of subscriber big, you know, landmark, because it's one of those things which I don't want to talk about because it's very controversial, but I will get around to that. But Peter Capaldi is one of my favourites. Just want to sell that down as to maybe why my opinion is of this episode a certain way, because I know some people will criticise it, some people, I think it's weird, because I hear some people overrate this story, and I hear a lot of people underrate it. I think it's just fine, and I enjoy it for its emotional wealth to me. It has a lot of emotional value to me for it being Peter Capaldi's final story. But, you know, there's a lot of setup to go into this story. You know, it's not just Capaldi's final story, it's Moffat's final story, it's Murray Gold's final story as composer. It's kind of it feels like a massive shift from this to the next stage of New Who, more so than any other end of an era, like more so than the end of time from RTD to Moffat. Like, you know, when you think about it, the Chibnall era really feels like a massive reboot of Doctor Who. And it really was a big landmark moment in Doctor Who, and also this story wasn't originally going to exist. You know, if you put it into context, originally the Doctor Falls was supposed to be the 12th Doctor's regeneration story. If so, it may have been one of the best regeneration stories of all time. I think it's an absolute masterpiece, that two-parter. And that'd have been an amazing end for Capaldi. But because Chibnall didn't want to write a Christmas special, and Moffat wanted to keep the Christmas special kind of record, he wanted to keep that with the BBC because he thought he'd lose that place mark. He wrote one off the cuff for 12 in fear of losing it, only for Chibnall to then chuck that back in his face and not use it. So yeah, that's a real shame. But I do like the story for what it does. I mean, obviously it's following on from the cliffhanger at the end of Doctor Falls, where the 12th Doctor is refusing to regenerate, and he is surprised to see the first Doctor walk back to him, obviously played by David Bradley, as he played William Hartnell in An Adventure in Space and Time, which came about because Moffat was thinking of ideas of what to do, and then him and Peter Capaldi were discussing the idea of bringing back the first Doctor, and he thought, how could we do that? And then Peter Capaldi just went, well, you could always get in David Bradley. And then, Stephen Moffat was just like, oh, that's actually a great idea. And you did kind of think, I remember watching An Adventure in Space and Time going, why don't they do that? Like, why not? You could. Why not? I mean, it's not that big a deal to bring in a different actor. I mean, they did it before. They did it in The Five Doctors. Once it's been done once, it will be done a billion times. However, in my opinion, this should probably be it. Don't bring the first Doctor ever back again. He's come back enough times. We don't need to rely on the past as Doctor Who fans. We do it enough with the amount of returning villains and everything. But with returning Doctors, they can come back a little bit. But with this story, it makes some sense. But we can put that character to rest and enjoy the episodes that he exists in. But I do love how this story starts, just from a Doctor Who fan perspective. The way it says previously 709 episodes ago, it just makes you realize, oh my god, I love this show. I love that my show says 709 episodes ago. And at the time of watching, when it first came out, I hadn't watched The 10th Planet. I was aware of it being the first story to feature the Cyberman and it being his regeneration story. Beyond that, not really that much. And I have seen it, and I've got to say, it's a really good story. And yeah, I love the transition shot from Hartnell to Bradley. It's really well done. And also, beyond that, it shows you First Doctor's perspective. Going from that scene, walking out the TARDIS on the South Pole, and then bumping into Capaldi. And it's really nice because it shows basically the cliffhanger from the opposite perspective. And, this change of music kind of shows that. Like, he's just kind of walking around, and their moods are very different. One is a very old Doctor, 13, 14... I don't want to get involved in the numbers, because it's like, he's technically the 13th body, but the 14th regeneration, but he's the 12th Doctor, but I won't get into that. Time of the Doctor really did kind of confuse people. But, he's a very late-game Doctor compared to the first Doctor, and, he's tired of life. Whereas the first Doctor in this point is just kind of scared. It's a very different dilemma that they've got. They're both coming to the same conclusion at this point in time, but for very different reasons. And of course, it's not understood that the first Doctor would be scared of regeneration. I think it's a nice addition to canon. As it's his first regeneration, he would have reason to be scared. It's something that you don't experience. When someone tells you everything about you is going to change, you are going to change into a different body, a different persona. That's quite scary to jump into for the first time. So there's reason for it to worry the first Doctor. And the idea of the TARDIS bringing the 12th Doctor to this worried first Doctor to kind of show him himself and show him and, use him to convince himself to regenerate is a lovely touch. Now, as well, Mark Gatiss is actually in this story, and he plays quite a pivotal role, playing as the soldier, which is later revealed to be the Brigadier's ancestor, probably his granddad. I don't want to get too involved, but age-wise, it probably is his granddad. And yeah, it's kind of a bit of a bow out for him, as at the time it kind of felt like it was him saying goodbye to Doctor Who as well, which is kind of a sad moment, as these people have played a key role in New Who. Like, Stephen Moffat's kind of was there from the beginning. He wrote stories in Series 1, Series 2, Series 3, Series 4, and then became the showrunner. And same for Mark Gatiss. And same for Toby Whithouse, who actually makes a cameo, and is one of my little personal favourites Doctor Who writers in the new era. As, he actually makes a cameo in this as the German soldier, who's in a standoff with Mark Gatiss' soldier character. Which is a lovely little scene. I love the scene in Eep where he's standing off as, it really was just expresses the kind of sadness and despair of these innocent men who are forced into war. They don't want to kill each other, but by being soldiers, by being in this war, by being threatened by a gun, they're kind of in a situation where, like, I kind of have to pull the trigger and so do you, but I don't feel like either of us want to, and it's a really tough scene to watch. But then obviously time's frozen, he gets taken by testimony, and you see how he gets chucked into the Doctor, because at this point we've already seen that, because that cuts to the titles, but so we see the introductory scene all over again from the soldier's perspective, which is a nice touch as well. Now, I don't know if I'm going to go through the rest of this story chronologically, because, there's not too much to it, but, the whole idea behind testimony and taking people's bodies and, well, not taking people's bodies, time travelling to people's last moments, taking their memories and, enabling them to kind of come back to life and kind of have they are their own testimony, is a nice idea. And I do love the moment later on in the story where the Doctor kind of is just shocked by the idea that it's not an evil plan, which I kind of find quite funny. But the idea behind that as a kind of way to bring back certain characters such as Nardole, Bill, and obviously Clara at the end, is a smart idea. With Bill coming back, I don't know. At the time, I wasn't too bothered, because I do love Bill. She's a really good companion. Is she one of my favourites? I don't know if I can say that, because we only got one series of her. But did I like Series 10 when it came out? Yes, I loved Series 10. And I still do. I love Series 10. Just, it feels so fresh, still, now. Which is weird, considering it was Moffat's final series, and he decided to kind of give it a kind of fresh kick for a year, and then it was getting out already in 2018. But yeah, going back on Testimony, I do actually like the idea of them. It's quite a clever idea. It's an idea which can come back if they ever want to bring back dead characters. I mean, we could get, Adric to come back maybe one day. I mean, I'm not an Adric fan, but, that could have some story potential. But, moving on, I think I'd need to address the elephant in the room, which, obviously, in this story, is the First Doctor. Now, not exactly David Bradley's performance, but more specifically, some of the lines that are written for the First Doctor, which are a bit, I don't know, misjudged. As, he says things, I've got them written down here. He makes comment about, the 12th Doctor being a nurse, which is improbable because he's a man, and then he also says Polly clearly isn't here anymore, referring to the amount of dust. He then obviously says, ladies, or not all ladies made of glass. I have some experience with the fairest sex. This isn't a restaurant for the French. And then says, with language like that, you're getting a slap bottom. All of this, I'm like, that's not the First Doctor. I've watched the First Doctor. I admit, I haven't watched every episode that remains. That is watchable. I haven't. I actually haven't watched any episode from his third series. Not at all. Because it's just kind of very disjointed. And as soon as I realised there was no episode of Vicky remaining in Series 3, I just thought, oh God, no, because I love Vicky. And knowing that after the Time Meddler I couldn't see more of her, I just kind of couldn't be bothered. But yeah, the First Doctor isn't represented completely accurately in this. I mean, a lot of these lines are completely misjudged. There is one line about the TARDIS needing a spring clean in the First Doctor era, but it's actually not made by the Doctor. It's made by Barbara. And it's not her saying, I'm a woman, I need to do the cleaning. It's just going, Doctor, if you keep the TARDIS like this is going to need a whole jolly good spring clean at some point. It's not made by the Doctor. That isn't the Doctor's idea of, gender roles. It's made by someone from the 1960s, which makes sense. The Doctor, because he was written in the 1960s, doesn't actually completely have the ideals of a man from the 60s. Yes, given there are some bad lines in the First Doctor era. For example, the line from, I believe it is in the Daleks' Master Plan, I think it's in the Feast of Stephen, where, this place is full of Arabs or something. He says something like that. Well, no, this place is a madhouse, it's all full of Arabs, which is very bad. But beyond that, a lot of these aren't accurate. I mean, Polly is actually represented quite poorly. Do I think that in the First Doctor era? No, I think she's actually represented worse in the Second Doctor era, as Polly does have to make the tea in the 10th planet, but it's her being an active character, using it as just an excuse to stay in the story and not be kicked out of the room, so she can stay in the room and be important. In another story, in the Moon Base, the Second Doctor goes, go and fetch some tea while I think of something. Yeah, not the best line, Doctor. The fairest sex line, the lady's made of glass line. I'm like, no, this isn't a man with 60s ideals. He's a time traveller from the future. No, it's not. No. And I don't like it, because if someone hasn't watched the first Doctor, this is what they see. When they watch this, they are going to think that's the first Doctor, and it's not the first Doctor. If you want to see what the first Doctor's like, watch the Romans or the Aztecs. I mean, his performance is very different in these, and development very different. Watch the Romans. You'll love Hartnell in the Romans. It's fantastic. But yeah, I don't like these things, and that's not coming from David Bradley. This is coming from Moffat. So even though I do like this story, Moffat, why'd you write him like this? Why? I also, one other thing I like about the story is actually goes back to one of Capaldi's first ever stories, his second full story of his era, in fact, as in that story, Into the Dalek, he meets a good Dalek, which is a good Dalek by the end of the story, actually, Rusty. And we go back to see Rusty just to access the Dalek database, which is a nice callback to, the beginnings of his era, and you kind of realise how much he's grown since then as a character. As you know, back then the whole "am I a good man" was going throughout his mind, and that's the first time that question is first addressed in the beginning of that story. And he's come a long way from that point where you feel this Doctor definitely is a good man. That's where you are with this character now, and it's a great journey you've been on with this character as you kind of see that's where he was a long time ago. And it's just a nice moment. Also, Into the Dalek is actually a very good episode. I think I've always enjoyed it, and I don't think it gets mentioned enough. Now it's about time we start to talk about the actual ending of this story, and it is rather nice as the doctors decide to bring back the soldier to his own time, as it's their responsibility, as they're the reason he was taken out of his own time in the first place. And it's a great Doctor moment, as the Doctor doesn't quite save the day. I mean, he does technically for the soldier, but he's not the reason a miracle happens, and I'll get onto it. So obviously, he realises that the day and time he was supposed to die was Christmas Day, 1914, in Ypres, on the front lines, in no man's land, which doesn't happen, because the Doctor shifts the time by a few hours, and all that shouldn't change much on any given day, but because it's Christmas Day 1914, the Christmas armistice happens and his life is spared. And it doesn't even guarantee that he survives the war, but it just guarantees he survives that day. And it's a lovely moment, as it acknowledges a fantastic moment in human history. And I watched a film in like year 7 or year 8 at school around Christmas, which showed it, and it's a lovely moment, because these men on both sides, they were forced into it. A lot of them young, a lot of them underage, going to war, encouraged to go to war, and it's just such a tragic moment in history. And the fact that they all just stopped, and they probably were never going to fight again because of this day. But then after Christmas, they were all sent to different, factions of the army, and were never allowed to be under those same regiments all over again. They were mixed up, so they couldn't be with those people, which is tragic. But the idea that the Doctor, he says, look, this is the human miracle. This doesn't happen anywhere else. This isn't my doing. I just realised I could do it. Now, after this we get, scenes of seeing them play football. As the famous story goes, that they played football. I don't know who won. I've heard rumours that England won, but obviously I'm English. I don't know where the evidence is on who won the football match between the English and the Germans. We won the World Cup, so maybe it was us, but I don't know. I've got no clue. I just, as someone who kind of always loved history, I love this little moment, but really need to move on here. I love the final moments between the two Doctors, as it's clear that between the two Doctors they're kind of thinking what the other one's going to decide, as one has decided to change, but 12 is still considering whether or not he will let himself pass or not. And he kind of tells the first Doctor, look, you'll find out eventually, the long way round, which is obviously a bit of a reference to the line referring to Finding Gallifrey. But yeah, it's a lovely little moment, one saying goodbye as he goes into his TARDIS. The music is fantastic by Murray Gold. And then you get Varley, obviously the music, which plays when 10, or in the build-up to 10 dying, is played as he's about to regenerate. And it does the transition shot again going into the old square format for TV, black and white, and you see the original regeneration into Patrick Troughton, which is lovely. And I do love that. And it's really nice, as even though this story makes its mistakes with the first Doctor, it does show some respect to his era and that time. And it is nice, because Doctor Who is a long-running show. It's not, a new show. It's a show which has been spanning years and gathered fans throughout the ages. And that's one of the aspects why I love this show. It really is. Now, just after this, we also get another nice moment as the soldier acknowledges 12 as he kind of raises a glass to him, which is a lovely little moment, as he's not supposed to be able to see him. But if we move on, we will get to the bare bones of the final moments of this Doctor's era, as Bill sees him again, obviously still part of Testimony, trying to explain that she is Bill because of her memories, and then to show that her memories are important, she kind of shows Clara for like a minute, and this did get me a little bit. And I'll admit, I didn't like Clara originally when I saw her, when the show was going on. But over time, I've actually come to like her a lot more. I mean, she's not my favourite companion, but I do like her a lot more, and I respect her arc and what they went with her. And it really did hit me a little bit. And I just love Capaldi's relationship with her. And the idea that, in his final moments, he gets those memories back is really touching. It's a lovely little moment. And the fact that he doesn't let his companions, because obviously just after this Nardole reappears, and which is lovely, because I love the Series 10 TARDIS team. It's fantastic. Him, Nardole and Bill, everything complements each other very well. And even though they're there trying to convince him not to die, he goes, look, you can all say what you want, but I'm going to do this on my own. And it's lovely as he goes into the TARDIS, and the actual TARDIS itself is trying to talk to him and trying to convince him not to do it, which is lovely. And here you just get a fantastic line after the fantastic line, or maybe one more lifetime won't kill anyone, well, except me. That's just fantastic. The idea that he's actually talking to himself, he's talking to the future version of himself, or herself, technically, it's so genius. It's such a great way of ending a Doctor's arc. Because obviously you get the line, hate is always foolish, love is always wise, always try to be nice but never fail to be kind. These are fantastic lines, summing up, the true core of the character of the Doctor. The whole idea behind children knowing the Doctor's name, if the stars are in the right place and their hearts are too. I think I've got that line mixed up. That line, I don't know if it's completely true, but I saw it rumoured that came from the idea that Peabody met a sick kid, and he told him that, and I love that. I love that made it into the story. That's beautiful. But this Doctor's final lines: laugh hard, run fast, be kind. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful lines from a wonderful Doctor. And then, the final line: Doctor, I let you go. It's him accepting his fate and going, look, I've had a great time. It's your turn. And it's lovely. It's a lovely story. I'm not going to mention anything about, Jodie Whittaker. She has 2 lines, then falls out of the bloody TARDIS. There's nothing to really say. In fact, it's always annoyed me a bit that the way she crashes is she just clicks a button and the TARDIS starts to crash. I'm like, that doesn't really... Okay, fine. But that's just a bit of a nitpick as to how the TARDIS crashes. But I admit I was excited when I first saw it, leading into The Woman Who Fell to Earth. But yeah, I do like this story. I do like it a fair bit. What would I give it out of 10? I think I'd probably give it a 6. I'm not, saying it's awful. I'm just saying it's all right. I think it affects me the way it probably wants it to. But at the same time, I don't think there's too much of a story to be had here. And for a story which was cobbled together and rushed, it is quite good, because it was never supposed to exist. And I'll credit Moffat for that, because, he didn't plan to make this story. He just kind of was forced into the situation where he had to. And I do like it for what it is. And I love Pete Capaldi's Doctor. I love him. And it's really hard for him to not be around. And the fact that he's probably never going to come back as well, as rumoured, he probably won't come back for the 60th or for Big Finish. It's really hard to deal with, because he's one of my favourite Doctors, and I love him as the Doctor. Not just, in the role, but just when he was the Doctor, the way he speaks about the program itself, the way he loves the program and is a fan himself, it's just brilliant. I'd love to meet him one day, and if I would just talk to him about Doctor Who. I wouldn't ask him about his era. I'd ask him, so, do you think this about, I don't know, Castrovalva or something? I'd ask him questions like that. But yeah, that's all I need to do. I've done my talking about this story. That is it. I'm done. I've done all my reviews. It's all over. It's done. It's so weird. I've finished the entire series. Whew. I don't know whether I'm going to list my entire new ranking, because I've given an out of 10 score on each review. So, yeah. I might update it on an Instagram post. So, yeah, if you want to check my Instagram out, that is linked in the description. If you think something different about this episode, or you agree with me, comment below what you actually think of the story. If you like this review, then, drop a like. That would really help me out. That would be really nice, because it's, an indication that you like this kind of content. Also, if you want to see more content from me, subscribe. I'll come up right in your feed every single time I upload, so you will never miss an upload. And also, if you don't want to miss an upload even more than you already are, ding the bell for notifications, so you'll get a notification to your phone or laptop or whatever whenever I upload. Which, if you want to know when I'm uploading, then do that. But I think that's it. So, this is my last video before Christmas. This should be coming out on Christmas Eve. So for once, my farewell message in this series is actually very useful. I've been the Bald Whovian, and I'll see you around. Merry Christmas.